Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
नहीं දැන් ඔයා 6යි කාලෙට මැෂින් එක ඔන් කරන්න. ඔව්.
Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening. Good evening. So today we are here to start the Excel, actually the O-level biology part. Though you have started work in your schools in the month of September last year, uh, here at Guru Nivasa we are starting the sessions on January onwards, so we can quickly cover up those lessons that you have done so far at school. Yes, Rahma, what's your school?
Lyceum teacher,
Uh, which branch?
Anuradhapura.
Okay. So just let me know whether you have started last year, because now you are doing the biology syllabus for 2 years now. The O level you are doing, are you doing this book?
Yes, teacher.
Right. So you are doing this for 2 years, right?
For about 1.5.
1.5, right. So you started on September.
Yes.
So you are facing the exam on
May.
May, means 2026.
No, this year, teacher.
Ah, is it? This so you have started September, means in 2023 then, is it? I just wanted to know because there are two batches now, so I just want to know whether to which batch that you belong.
Yes, teacher. I started 2023 September.
2023 September. Okay. So that's the issue. So if certain students join, okay, right. So here we will have to do a speedy revision then, is it? Okay, right. So today as the first day, actually based on the audience we were to decide what is the way that we have to follow. Right now you say that you have started in 2023, then you have only few months left, right? Okay. Then as it is the first day, I will just discuss about certain subject matter related to actually we'll take certain topics and just go through them today, right? To just revise the things. Is it okay?
Okay, teacher.
Right. So first we'll start with balanced diet, right? So as living organisms, one of the living characteristics is nutrition. We obtain the materials by taking food in, right? We obtain the materials, then these materials get digested, right? These materials get digested and the digestive end products are absorbed into blood. Then these nutrients get transported to the cells and they react with oxygen in order to produce energy, what we call as cellular respiration. So nutrition, obtaining materials, and gaining energy, respiration, these two are related in that manner. But we say that we eat in order to get energy, but by eating we get the materials, those materials get digested and the end products react with oxygen in order to produce energy. Right, Hari? So what do you mean by a balanced diet? What do you mean by a balanced diet?
A diet that produces all the nutrients in the correct proportions.
Alright, a diet which contains all the nutrients in the correct proportion, as well as it should include water and fiber as well, right? Then only we can call it as a balanced diet. So what are the major nutrients? We will mention about the major nutrients. We will take one by one and explain. Before that, just tell me what are the major nutrients. Yes, what are the major nutrients?
Proteins,
Carbohydrates,
lipids,
and lipids, right? These are the major nutrients, and in addition to that we have to talk about vitamins and minerals as well. Though these are needed in small quantities, if we lack those, we will come up with a number of deficiency symptoms, right? So we'll take one by one the major nutrients and let's discuss. Before that, I will share a small video related to a balanced diet.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Wright, an accredited nutritionist, and I specialise in helping people all across the world achieve their goals without any silly fad diets. On today's episode of Nutritionist Explained, we're going to be talking about what is a balanced diet. How we feel ourselves matters. Now, I hope that doesn't come to a surprise to any of you, but our diet directly impacts both our physical and mental health. And for you athletes out there, it's also critically influential in your recovery, performance, and body composition. In this episode of Nutritionist Explains, we're going to talk about all things balanced diet and how you can piece together a diet that works for you and supports you in moving towards your goals. Balanced or healthy diet means many different things to many different groups of people. We live in an age whereby I genuinely don't think I could give a definition of a balanced diet without upsetting someone, so I've gone and I've dug to find the version of a balanced diet that I believe will appeal to the majority of you watching. But before I jump into that, let's look at the most popular iterations of a balanced diet. Let's start off with the UK's Eat Well Guide, a pictorial representation of a healthy diet which superseded the Eat Well plate in 2016. The guide is split into 5 categories with the following daily recommendations. Aim to eat at least 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. A third of your daily energy intake should come from potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, and other starchy carbohydrates, with an aim to choose whole grain or higher fibre options where possible. The guide recommends having some beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins, including 2 portions of fish every week, of which 1 should be oily. The guide also recommends to include some dairy or dairy alternatives, such as soya drinks, aiming to choose lower fat and lower sugar options where possible. And finally, the guide also asks to incorporate small amounts of unsaturated oils and spreads. The Eat Well guide also provides some suggestions for energy intake and maintaining adequate hydration, but these are rather generic. On to the next set of balanced diet principles I wanted to touch on, the United States version of the Eat Well guide, MyPlate. MyPlate was first introduced in 2011 and replaced MyPyramid, which ultimately got scrapped because it was so confusing. On the surface, MyPlate and the Eat Well guide aren't hugely dissimilar. Both would have a greater preference for carbohydrates over fats and protein, and both advocate for more plants in the diet. The MyPlate is slightly different in that it is more simplistic and is divided into 4 categories: grains, vegetables, fruits, and protein, with a smaller circle outside of the plate to represent dairy. The MyPlate also has more defined percentage-based recommendations compared to the Eat Well guide, and recommends that 30% of your diet or plate is grains, 40% of it is vegetables, 10% is fruits, and the remaining 20% is protein. Now, before I launched into 2 of the more popular sets of balanced diet guidelines, I did say that I had dug pretty deep on this subject to find you, at least in my mind, the best set of general healthy eating guidelines. Want to know where I found them? South Korea. They use the food balance wheels. Now, the reason why I'm a fan of the food balance wheels over some other balanced diet guidelines is the advocacy for more protein in the diet, as they recommend 3 to 4 portions per day. While that recommendation, at least in its practical application without further education on appropriate serving sizes, may not be optimal for health, at least in my opinion, it does appear to help influence Koreans in achieving a better daily intake of protein compared to other countries who often.
So here you can get an idea that the nutrition requirement of different groups of people is different, and but the major nutrients do not differ. In a balanced diet, we are supposed to take all these nutrients as well as fiber, and also water should be there. Water content is also very important for the balanced diet, because water is essential to maintain a healthy digestive system. That it is important to have a proper digestion, right?
Provides all the essential nutrients in the right proportions to maintain health, vitality, and energy. It includes a variety of foods from all the food groups to ensure the intake of necessary vitamins, minerals, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Important nutrients in a balanced diet include the following: carbohydrates as the primary source of energy, proteins essential for growth, repair, and maintenance of body tissues, fats necessary for energy, cell function, and the absorption of certain vitamins. Vitamins, vital for various biochemical functions. Minerals, important for bone health, nerve function, enzyme activity, and muscle contraction. Fiber, aids in digestion and helps maintain healthy bowel movements. Water, crucial for hydration, digestion, and overall bodily functions. Having a balanced diet is beneficial for health in a variety of ways. It helps maintain overall health and reduces the risk of chronic diseases, and provides consistent energy throughout the day. A balanced diet also helps in maintaining a healthy weight. Other benefits of a balanced diet include the following: improves mood and cognitive function, strengthens the immune system, promotes healthy digestion and prevents constipation, contributes to the health and appearance of skin and hair. Foods to include in a balanced diet include fruits such as apples, bananas, berries, oranges, and grapes. Vegetables such as leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, and root vegetables like carrots and potatoes. Whole grains like oats, quinoa, brown rice, and whole wheat bread. Proteins including lean meats, fish, eggs, legumes, nuts, seeds, and tofu. Dairy products like milk, cheese, and yogurt, preferably low-fat or fat-free. Healthy fats such as avocados, olive oil, nuts, seeds, and fatty fish. For hydration, you can add water, herbal teas, and occasional fresh fruit juices. Incorporating a variety of these foods ensures a balanced intake of all essential nutrients, supporting overall health and well-being. An ideal food plate for a balanced diet contains proteins, 1/4 of the plate, carbohydrates, another quarter of the plate, and the remaining half should contain fruits and vegetables.
Okay, then as you told, in a balanced diet there are carbohydrates, proteins and lipids, right? So we will take carbohydrates first. So I will say a balanced diet diet. So the major nutrients that we need to obtain, these are carbohydrates, then proteins and lipids. Right. So what do you know about carbohydrates? What are the component elements in a carbohydrate? Yes. Elemental composition of a carbohydrate? Yes, Rahma. The elements available are? Yes.
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Then what is the common formula of these? Yes, that is CX H2O Y, and you know hydrogen to oxygen ratio there is 2:1. 2:1. Then we can divide the carbohydrates into 3 categories. What are they? What are the 3 categories of carbohydrates? 3 main categories. We'll come to that after the basic introduction. After carbohydrates, there are proteins. What are the elements present in a protein? Yes. Elements present in a protein?
Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen.
Oxygen, nitrogen. In some of the proteins you find sulfur, not in all, right? Can you remember
Yes.
what is the basic unit of a protein? You know, these proteins are actually polymers, right? So what is the basic unit of a protein?
Amino acid.
An amino acid. Yes, amino acid. Then we'll come to that later on. Then what about lipids? What are the elements present in a lipid?
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So in carbohydrates also we find these 3. Is there any difference in between carbohydrates and lipids? Yes. Do you find any difference? Yes. Lipids release energy, and also carbohydrates release energy on oxidation, but in a lipid the hydrogen to oxygen ratio is greater than in a carbohydrates, right? That's the difference. And once we say lipids, there are 2 types. Yes. The lipid is made out of what? Fatty acids and
Glycerol.
Glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, I'm just going through the topics, right? I don't think that you need to take down this. Right? Do you want? Do you want to take down these? If wanted, I will give you time. Do you want? Okay, then you can take down quickly within 2 minutes. Hurry. Then we'll take carbohydrates. Right? We'll take carbohydrates. If we take carbohydrates, so we can identify 3 main carbohydrates. 3 categories there are: monosaccharides, and there are disaccharides, and then polysaccharides. Okay, then these monosaccharides and disaccharides are known as simple sugars, right? These are simple sugars. So monosaccharide is the basic unit of a polysaccharide. It is the monomer. So if we indicate a monosaccharide, it is something like, if this is just an indication, this is the basic unit, the monomer, right? So in the formation of a disaccharide, what happens? Right? In between two, now there are 2 monomers which have been combined together. There are 2 monomers which have been combined like this. 2 monomers are combined together by a bond known as a glycosidic bond. Then since there are 2 monomers, we call it as a disaccharide. The bond in between these 2 is known as a glycosidic bond. Right. Then when it comes to a polysaccharide, we'll discuss how this disaccharide is formed out of a monosaccharide. So these polysaccharides, these are polymers actually. These are polymers. That means this monosaccharide, the monomer, has undergone a polymerization reaction in order to form the polysaccharide. So number of monomers have combined together by glycosidic bonds in order to form the polysaccharide, right? So since we don't know the number of monomer units, we can just indicate it like this. We don't know the number, therefore we put a bracket, and out of the bracket we can put n. N number of monomers have been combined, right? So if we take examples, we can say now starch is a polymer. Starch is a polymer, right? So the monomer of the formation of starch is glucose. The smallest unit is glucose. So two glucose molecules combine and form a disaccharide, then we call it as maltose. Maltose, right? Two glucose molecules combine in order to form maltose, and the starch, which is a polysaccharide, it is formed by the polymerization of a number of glucose molecules, right? So we'll see how this happens. Okay, once again, before I clean, you can just take down. Okay, have you finished? Right, then we will discuss about formation of disaccharides out of these monosaccharides. Before that, once again I will share a small video.
හැමදාම හදන රොටිවලට B විටමින් පෝෂණය එක් කරන්න මාමයිට් බ්‍රෙක්ෆාස්ට් පාර්ට්නර් කරගන්න.
Carbohydrates are Carbohydrates are biomolecules that consist of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms, usually in the ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. Carbohydrates play crucial roles in living organisms. Among other functions, they serve as major sources of energy and structural components. Carbohydrates are made of base units called monosaccharides. Monosaccharides consist of a carbon chain with a hydroxyl group attached to all carbons except one, which is double bonded to an oxygen. This carbonyl group can be in any position along the chain, forming either a ketone or an aldehyde. Some monosaccharides share the same molecular formula, but are different in structure due to different positions of atoms. These seemingly small structural details result in completely different sugars, with different properties and metabolism pathways. Monosaccharides exist in open chain form and closed ring form. The ring forms can connect to each other to create dimers, oligomers, and polymers, producing disaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides, respectively. Examples of disaccharides are sucrose, maltose, and lactose. Common polysaccharides include glycogen, starch, and cellulose, all of which are polymers of glucose. Their differences arise from the bonds between monomers. Glycogen and starch serve as energy storage in animals and plants, respectively. Their monomers are bonded by alpha linkages. Some monomers can make more than one connection, producing branches. Starch in food can be digested by breaking these bonds with the enzyme amylase. Cellulose, the major structural component of plants, consists of unbranched chains of glucose bonded by beta linkages, for which humans lack the enzyme to digest. Cellulose and other non-digestible carbohydrates in food do not supply energy, but are an important part of human diet known as dietary fibers. Fibers help slow digestion, add bulk to stool to prevent constipation, reduce food intake, and may help lower risk of heart diseases. During digestion, digestible carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. Digestion of starch starts with amylase in the saliva and continues in the small intestine by other enzymes. Sucrose and lactose are hydrolyzed by their respective intestinal enzymes. Simple sugars are then absorbed through the intestinal wall and transported in the bloodstream to tissues for consumption or storage. Foods rich in simple sugars deliver glucose to the blood quickly and can be helpful in case of hypoglycemia, but regular diets of simple sugars produce high spikes of glucose and may promote insulin insensitivity and diabetes. Complex carbohydrates take longer to digest and release simple sugars. Eating complex carbohydrates helps dampen the spikes of blood glucose and reduce diabetes risk. Glucose is central to cellular energy production. Cells break down glucose when energy reserves are low. Glucose that is not immediately used is stored as glycogen in liver and muscles. Glycogen is converted back to glucose when glucose is in short supply. Energy production from glucose starts with glycolysis, which breaks glucose into two molecules of pyruvate, releasing a small amount of energy. Glycolysis involves multiple reactions and is tightly regulated by feedback mechanism. In the absence of oxygen, such as in the muscles during exercise, pyruvate is converted into lactate. This anaerobic pathway produces no additional energy, but it regenerates NAD+, which is required for glycolysis to continue. When oxygen is present, pyruvate is further degraded to form acetyl-CoA. Significant amounts of energy can be extracted from oxidation of acetyl-CoA to carbon dioxide by the citric acid cycle and the following electron transport system. When present in excess, acetyl-CoA is converted into fatty acids. Reversely, fatty acids can break down to generate acetyl-CoA during glucose starvation. When blood sugar level is low and glycogen is depleted, new glucose can be synthesized from lactate, pyruvate, and some amino acids in a process called gluconeogenesis, which is almost the reverse of glycolysis. Metabolism of other simple sugars converges with the glycolytic pathway at different points. For example, fructose feeds into the pathway at the level of 3 carbon intermediate, and thus bypasses several regulatory steps. Fructose entrance to glycolysis is therefore unregulated, unlike glucose. This means production of acetyl-CoA from fructose and its subsequent conversion to fats can occur unchecked without regulation by insulin.
Okay, Rahma. So you can ask questions. So as I told you today, I am just going through the topics. You can ask questions if you have any. It doesn't matter. Yes, Rahma.
No, teacher. I don't have.
Right. Then we'll see how these disaccharides are made out of monosaccharides. They are we'll take 2 monosaccharides, monosaccharide, so I will put 2 in front of this, 2 monosaccharides, right? In between 2 monosaccharide molecules, actually a water molecule is removed. We call this as removal of water. This is known as condensation. Condensation, right? Condensation. So as a result, I will just write it like this. I will just increase the length of the arrow. Condensation, right? Then a disaccharide is formed. Disaccharide is formed, right? And the removed water molecule is also there, right? So this reaction is a reversible reaction. This can happen in the opposite way as well, right? So I will put another half arrow towards this direction. Once the disaccharide is hydrolyzed, we can say addition of hydrogen ions. When it is hydrolyzed, it results in the 2 monosaccharides once again, right? So this way we call it as hydrolysis. Hydrolysis. Okay. So if we take an example, now 2 glucose molecules, glucose plus glucose. Now condensation occurs, removal of a water molecule takes place, condensation. Then this results in a maltose molecule, maltose plus the removed water molecule plus water, right? When this maltose molecule is hydrolyzed, it will result in the 2 glucose molecules once again. We call it as hydrolysis. So if we take the chemical formula, you know, glucose is C6H12O6, right? It is C6H12O6. So since there are 2 glucose molecules, I will put 2 in front. So once condensation, when a water molecule is removed, it results in maltose, C12H22O11. O11. Now what has happened? Me balan. 2C6 means there are altogether 12 carbon atoms on this side, right? Then 2 into 12, altogether 24 carbon hydrogen atoms are there. Then 2 into 6, altogether 12 oxygen atoms are there, right? Therefore, what happens here? Now on this side only 12 carbon atoms, it's okay. But when it comes to hydrogen, there are only 22 atoms. But here there had been 24. So what has happened to the rest of the 2 atoms? That is because of water, H2O. Right, 22 plus 2, 24. Right. oxygen 11 plus 1, 1 in water, 11 plus 1, that is 12. Right, now it is balanced. No? So it's clear that due to a removal of a water molecule as a result of removing a water molecule, actually this glycosidic bond is formed in between two monomers or two monosaccharides, and a disaccharide is formed. This is the removed water molecule. Is that clear? Yes, Rahma?
Yes, teacher.
Right, you can take it down, and then we'll just mention about proteins. So are you going to school these days, or are you on holidays?
I'm going to school, teacher.
Okay. Finished?
Yes, teacher.
Hi. Then what do you know about proteins? So you mentioned about the elements present in proteins. So the proteins are made out of amino acids, as you mentioned. So what is the basic structure of an amino acid? Do you know? Yes, I will just mention. Right, if we take an amino acid, so there is a center carbon atom, then carbon has made 4 bonds, so there is a carboxyl group, COOH group, then there is an amino group, NH2, right, then there is a hydrogen group, and also there is a varying group, right, which we call as R. So based on this group R, there are 20 different amino acids, right? There are different amino acids based on this R group. For example, the simplest amino acid is glycine. This R is equal to hydrogen. That is what you told. The component elements are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. But in some of the amino acids, we find sulfur as a component element, right? I will stop talking about the major nutrients there. Then shall we talk about some other topic? Shall we move on to the topic reproduction, right? So reproduction is something important for the continuation of a species, right? Biologically it is an important process for the survival, for the continuous existence of a particular species, right? If the reproductive process is not there, that would be the end of that particular species. Therefore reproduction is a very important process, and we can divide this reproduction as asexual reproduction as well as sexual reproduction. So in the case of plants, the asexual reproduction is also known as the vegetative propagation, right? In a plant, the sexual reproductive structure is the flower, right? When plants are reproduced, plants are produced by means of vegetative parts like roots, stem, twigs, the stem cuttings, or else we'll say leaves in some of the cases. When those vegetative parts produce new plants, we call it as asexual reproduction or the vegetative propagation. So when the flower is involved, the flower develops into a fruit. Inside the flower, inside the ovary, there are ovules. These ovules develop into seeds. If those seeds germinate and produce new plants, we call it as the sexual reproduction in the case of plants, right? So the basic structures of a flower. There are both if I just sketch the structure of a flower. So there is the gynosium, which consists of the stigma, right? This is the stigma, and then style and the ovary, right? These are known as the female parts of a flower, which we call as the gynosium, right? Then if we draw the male parts using blue, this is known as the anther, and this is the filament. So these are known as the male parts of the flower. So we can call them as the androsium, or collectively we call it as the stamen. So in the case of these, we call it as the pistil, right? Okay. So inside the anther, in the anther, there are pollen. The term pollen. Pollen is the male gamete of a plant. Pollen, male gametes. And inside the ovary, what do we find? Inside the ovary there are ovules, right? These ovules are considered to be the female gametes of a plant. These are ovules, right? So ovules are the female gametes. Okay, right? Then what happens? So a process known as fertilization. There what happens during fertilization? We'll say fertilization. During fertilization, what happens? The male and female gametes fuse together, right? So the male and female gametes fuse together during fertilization. So male gamete, or what we call as the pollen, it has a haploid genetic composition, right? Haploid genetic composition. This is common to the case of animals also, but here I have mentioned the names of gametes for plants, right? Here I have mentioned the names of gametes for plants. In the case of animals, the male gametes are known as sperms and the female gametes are known as ova, right? Singular is ovum. There are different terms that we have to use. Hari. So, in sexual reproduction during fertilization, what happens is male gametes fuse with female gametes. So, both are having a haploid genetic composition, right? Haploid genetic composition, right? Then the fusion of these two gametes produces a diploid cell which is known as the zygote. So the life begins with this zygote which is having a diploid genetic composition, right? Then in the case of multicellular organisms, the zygote undergoes mitotic cell divisions in order to increase the number of cells. Hari, we'll mention about it, so you can take this down also. Is finished. Have you finished, Rahma?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, then we'll watch this.
Are you searching for a place where you can live and learn? Where you can immerse yourself in your studies and
Types of reproduction.
Sexual. In summary, sexual reproduction Reproduction means producing more of the same type of organism. People having babies, plants producing seeds, and bacteria dividing are all examples of reproduction. There are two main types, sexual and asexual. In summary, sexual reproduction involves two parents, each one providing a reproductive cell which combines with the other parent's reproductive cell to produce a new, unique cell, which can develop into a complete organism. Asexual reproduction, on the other hand, requires only one parent, and all the offspring are genetic clones of that parent. Let's look at them both in a little more detail. Under most circumstances, animals reproduce by sexual reproduction. An egg cell from the female fuses with a sperm cell from the male. These reproductive cells, the egg and sperm cells, are known as gametes, and this process of fusion to form a new cell is called fertilization. It's worth noting here that the spelling of fertilization depends on which type of English you use. Now, like all cells, the gametes contain DNA, the genetic instructions that make us who we are. During fertilization, the DNA of each parent combines, meaning that when the cells fuse, they produce a new, unique cell with a combination of the DNA of each parent. This new cell is called a zygote. The zygote then divides millions upon millions of times and develops into a new organism. The same general process happens in flowering plants. They have male and female gametes which combine to produce a zygote. The male gametes of flowers are found in pollen grains, while the female gametes are found in the ovules. A fertilized ovule develops into a seed, which can develop into a new plant. Unlike sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction involves one parent producing offspring which have DNA that is identical to that parent's DNA. Let's look at a few examples in plants. Some plants produce runners. These are basically long stems that grow horizontally. In certain points along the runner, new vertical stems and roots can form. If separated from the parent plant, these new stem and root systems, the daughter plants, can exist independently. Here you can see a strawberry plant with a runner stem and its daughter plants. Tubers are another method. Tubers are basically just modified plant stems or roots acting as a storage of food for the plant. Potatoes are a really common example of tubers. If you've ever left potatoes for too long before eating them, you might have noticed they grow little green shoots on them. This happens to potatoes in the ground too, and these new stems can grow into new independent plants. Since they ultimately came from a single parent plant, they have the same DNA and are genetically identical to that parent. Another example is bulbs. These are another type of modified stem, again providing a storage of food. Onions are a well-known example of plant bulbs. A single bulb can produce daughter bulbs, which can each grow into separate, genetically identical plants. All of the examples of asexual reproduction in plants outlined so far are natural, meaning they can occur in nature without any human involvement. But humans sometimes use artificial methods of asexual reproduction in plants if the plant is useful to us for food, medicine, etc. With some plants, you can take cuttings. This basically means cutting off a small section of a plant and putting it in the soil. The cutting will form roots and exist as an independent plant. Another method is micropropagation. This is a big topic that deserves a video of its own, but in summary, it involves taking plant tissue from one plant in sterile laboratory conditions and allowing it to grow into new plants with the help of nutrients and hormones. Back to natural examples, plants aren't the only organisms that reproduce asexually. Bacteria reproduce by a single bacterium cell dividing to produce two daughter cells, each one genetically identical to the original parent cell. This is called binary fission. Yeasts are another example. They can reproduce using a technique called budding. This is where a daughter cell, the bud, forms from the parent cell. It has identical DNA to the parent cell and will separate to live as an independent cell. Even some animals can reproduce asexually. For example, certain species of starfish are able to remove a part of their body. Both separate sections of body can then regrow the missing section, leaving two genetically identical individuals from the original one. Both sexual and asexual reproduction have their advantages, but that's all presented in the next video.
Okay, so it mentioned about the two types of reproduction, but basically they just concentrated on asexual reproduction. Hari. Then we'll mention about. Now, in the case of animals, we give special names to the gametes, right? You know this. The female gametes are known as ova. The singular term is ovum, right? Ova. And we call them as eggs also. Then in the case of males, the male gametes, they are known as sperms. So, during the formation of these gametes, which we call as gametogenesis, you know, what type of cell division takes place during gametogenesis? Yes, what is it?
What, teacher?
During gametogenesis, what is the cell division that is occurring?
Meiosis.
Meiosis, yes, meiosis. Okay, so we can say, you just take this down because I need to clear the board to write how the gametogenesis occurs, then the fusion of gametes and how they develop further. Okay, then now in the case of males, the sperm mother cell, which is having a diploid genetic composition, undergoes meiosis. Meiotic cell divisions occur and it produces the haploid sperm, right? This is what we call as the gamete, right? Then in the case of females, the ovum mother cell, which is having a diploid genetic composition, undergoes meiosis and forms the haploid gamete, what we call as the ovum, right? Ovum, that is having a haploid genetic composition. So the formation of these two gametes is what we call as gametogenesis. Here I will write gametogenesis. Then what happens? The sperm and the ovum, they fuse together, which we call as fertilization. Fertilization. As a result of fertilization, we learnt that the diploid zygote is formed. Zygote, that is diploid. Okay, this is the process. Fertilization, as a result, the diploid zygote is formed. Right? So here during gametogenesis, the cell division occurred was, as you told, that is meiosis. Meiosis took place. Sorry, we have mentioned here. No? Then the zygote undergoes mitotic cell divisions. Zygote undergoes mitotic cell divisions and form, first they form a cluster of cells which we call as the morula, right? Cluster of cells which we call as the morula. Then it will further divide. Now cell division takes place. What type of cell division takes place here? What is this cell division? That is mitosis. Yes, mitotic cell divisions occur, and as a result the number of cells increases. Then it develops into the embryo, and after 3 months we call it as the fetus, the fetal stage, right? Fetal development takes place. Then once it is born, we call it as the infant, and the infant develops into an adult, right? So throughout this, what happens? What cell division takes place? Mitosis takes place, right? Throughout this process, so I will say like this, throughout this process, mitotic cell divisions occur. As a result, the number of cells increase in multicellular organisms like us, right? Actually, I have written this for a human being, infant and adult. So, there mitotic cell divisions occur. Okay, you can take down. Huh? අර කවුද විහාස්නාද කවුද වන්ද කෝල් කළා ඉස්සෙල්ලා. දැන් අද අනිත් අය හිටියද? තිනාර හැම හිටියද? හසාරගෙන් කෝල් එකක් කළා හලෝ 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 කිය. ඒ ඔයාද? තියුම් කිව් කතා කළේ නෑනේ. මට ඔෆිස් එකට ගිහිල්ලා ගත්තා ඒ ලිස්ට් එක තියෙන ඔක්කොම හේතු ටික කියනවා කෝල් එකක් කරලා එලා මම නානවා. මං ගත්තා හලෝ 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 කිව්වා එච්චරයි. මම ගත්තා අපහු. එයා කො මේ තේදෝර අද බැඩ්මින්ටන් ගියේ නැද්ද? Yes, finished? Have you finished, Rahma?
Yes, teacher.
Okay. Right. Then just mention what happens during sexual reproduction. Um, then you have to learn about the structure of the male and female reproductive systems as well. We'll discuss them later on. Then if I take the topic photosynthesis, we will just revise the things. So this is the process by which the whole living world obtains materials, right? Obtains food. So plants and also certain other autotrophic organisms, photoautotrophic organisms are capable of doing photosynthesis. So for that they need certain factors, right? They need carbon dioxide and water as the raw materials. Carbon dioxide and water as the raw materials, and in the presence of light energy. We don't need to essentially say sunlight, we can say light energy. Light energy that is absorbed by chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, the green pigment which is available inside the chloroplast, right? Then this produces glucose as the main product, and its byproduct is very important. The byproduct is also very important for the maintenance of carbon dioxide and oxygen balance in the atmosphere. This is the only natural process which takes carbon dioxide in and gives out oxygen. So other than providing food for the whole living world, this is important to maintain carbon dioxide oxygen balance in the environment, to minimize global warming, right? There are so many uses of this. This is something essential for the survival of living organisms, right? So if we write the this is the word equation. If we write the balanced chemical equation, carbon dioxide, we need 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 water molecules. In the presence of these two factors, light, and it is absorbed by chlorophyll. Chlorophyll that produces glucose, C6H12O6, and also 6 oxygen atoms. So glucose is the main product of photosynthesis. This is the main product. We'll say that this is the main product, and oxygen is the byproduct of photosynthesis. Byproduct, right? Then we'll see what happens to the glucose produced during photosynthesis. Okay, you can take down the word equation and the balanced chemical equation for photosynthesis. And you can mention the physical state also. Here this is in gaseous state, this is in liquid state, glucose in the solid state, and oxygen in the gaseous state. Hari. Then what happens to the glucose produced? What happens to the glucose produced? This glucose is temporarily stored in the form of starch, right, inside the leaves. But you know, this should not be stored inside the leaves itself. The other parts of the plant also needs that food. Therefore, this is converted into a solution of sucrose, right, solution of sucrose, and it gets translocated through the phloem tissue, through the phloem tissue. We call this process as translocation, not transportation. We call it as translocation of food through the phloem tissue, right? Then once it is taken to the storage parts of the plant, it gets stored in the form of starch once again, stored in the form of starch, stored as starch. So in some of the plants, you know, the roots store food, carrot, beetroot. Likewise, in some of the cases, the stem stores food, like what? Sugarcane. In some of the plants, the fruits store food. So the stored type of carbohydrate in plants is starch, stored in the form of starch. And you know, there are two main transportation tissues, water and minerals. Water and dissolved minerals are transported along the xylem tissue, and food gets translocated in the form of a sucrose solution through the phloem tissue. That is why we find sucrose in the phloem sap, because the translocation occurs in the form of a sucrose solution. Hari, you can just note it down. So here we can say what happens to glucose. What happens after photosynthesis? Okay. So the photosynthetic process happens inside the chloroplast, right? Chloroplast, you know, it is a double membraned organelle, and it contains this green pigment chlorophyll, right? It is more or less oval in shape. So there are two membranes like this, and inside it we find structures like stacks of coins, which we call as thylakoids, right? So the photosynthetic reactions occur inside these thylakoid membranes. Just extend further, we can find something like this, right? This is the basic structure of chloroplast, right, where photosynthesis takes place. So these are available inside the plant leaves. Plant leaf is the most prominent organ in the plant where photosynthesis takes place, but and sometimes the tender stems, immature parts of plants, when they are having chlorophyll, they can carry out photosynthesis. So if we consider a cross section of a plant leaf, if you want, we can just label the parts here in the inner membrane, inner membrane. And this is the outer membrane. And these are the thylakoids. Right, that's enough. So there are certain free ribosomes inside, right? Right, you can just sketch it. So inside the thylakoids we find a lumen, right? The complete stack of coins is known as the thylakoid, right? The single coin-like structure can be known as a granum. We call these as grana. Plural is grana. Then there are starch grains, free ribosomes inside the chloroplast. You can just show the free ribosomes also. In the stroma. You can show there are starch molecules, lipid granules, so they are available inside the stroma. Then these are available inside a plant leaf, right? These are available inside a plant leaf. So if we consider a cross section of a plant leaf, in some of the plant leaves we find a cuticle, right, on the upper epidermis. Then we can find the upper epidermal cell layer like this, upper epidermal cell layer. Then just below that we can find the palisade parenchyma, somewhat like teeth, no? Palisade parenchyma we can find, right? They actually they contain chlorophyll, palisade parenchyma, and then we can find the spongy parenchyma as well. We call them as spongy mesophyll cells. So collectively actually we call these as mesophyll cells. Spongy parenchyma. Right, there are spaces among these. Then we can find the lower epidermis, where we find yes, on both upper epidermis and lower epidermis we can have the stomata for the exchange of gases and also for transpiration. So these are the lower epidermal cells. And here I will draw the two guard cells. In between you can see the stomata, the stomatal pore, right? So these are the two guard cells. In dicots, you know, the guard cells are bean shaped. In monocots they have a dumbbell shape, right? So the guard cells, the two guard cells are responsible for opening and closing of the stomata. They also contain chloroplasts. So this is what we call as the stomatal pore. Stomatal pore. And if we label the parts here, I will just take this word down. So this is the cuticle, then the upper epidermis, and these are the palisade cells, palisade parenchyma. Then these are the spongy parenchyma, and these two are collectively known as mesophyll cells. Right? And here you can see the lower epidermis, and the two guard cells are shown, guard cells, and I have enlarged the two guard cells in order to show the stomatal pore. The guard cells are enlarged in order to show the stomatal pore. Okay, so this is a cross section of a plant leaf, and in between you can find the veins and veinlets which contain xylem and phloem to transport water and minerals. Actually, water is needed for photosynthesis, and to translocate the products of photosynthesis in the form of a sucrose solution, the phloem is there. Okay, you can take down. Okay, have you finished? So today actually I wanted to just go through certain topics in biology just to give you an idea. Okay. So from the coming week onwards, we will just discuss in an orderly manner.
Recording stopped.
Rahma,
Yes, teacher.